I want to introduce Rhett Harmon from MarshallGIS. He's going to be the instructor today. So, Rhett, take it away.
All right, thank you for the introduction, Tom. So it sounds like we've got water, transportation, and we've got some folks from GIS and engineering, but not energy. Is that correct, Tom, then?
Correct. Yeah, he was going to try to make it. Pardon me?
He needs to record this.
Yeah, so he'll probably be watching your recording, and we'll be going through this information with him. Again, energy is the one that only has 6 vehicles. Is that right? So they got kind of a small fleet.
Okay. So in terms of an agenda, what we'll do is this is an administrative training, so apologize for those that have not used LiGO before. This is sort of jumping into the details. We are planning on having a general user training soon, and that will be covering some of the basics of tracking the vehicles and some of those things. But this is getting into actually setting up, configuring, and administering this. And so some of the things we'll be doing is how to add users, modify users, add vehicles, or modify the vehicle names, reviewing some of the roles, tags, and views. So that's some of the permissions that you have for maybe additional users that you're wanting to add and then set their permissions up. How to modify your workspace so you can set up your own unique workspace and configure the user interface the way you want it to be set up, either maybe a larger map or smaller map, or move things around, and or maybe a different geographic area. Also going through some of the events, reviewing some of the events, and reviewing the reports and how to configure those as well. I just put this in just because we have a longer time period than I usually do for these as an hour, so I put in sort of a bonus section. If we have time, we can also cover points of interest in geofences. So points of interest in geofences are things that you can import into the system and track. As people go to locations, you can track when they arrive, when they depart, total time at that location, or leaving a boundary. And so I can cover some of that too if time allows. If we run out of time, we can set up another meeting, another training session to cover some additional things. So that's the general plan here. Just some real basic things when we get started. If you haven't logged in, this is how you can access it with the URL up above here. And then Tom, I believe, provided you with a username and then a password that you can log into the system. And just as a note, I will be providing this training material, this PowerPoint, so Tom can distribute it, and we are also recording this, so you'll have that as well. So just a little bit basic screen layout. Again, we're going to be covering more of this in the general user training, but just so you know, the vehicle list, you have a vehicle list on the right, and there's an associated vehicle name that's associated with a vehicle on the map. So as you click on the vehicle in your list, it'll center your map to that location of that vehicle. There's a list of tracks. So for a specific vehicle, you can draw historical tracks for that vehicle down below here. Up above, there's a reports menu and drop-down menu, so you can get to your reports and other drop-down menus up above on the upper toolbar. There's a map toolbar which you can move around, but that's essentially for interacting with the map itself. And again, we're going to be covering this more in the general user training, but just to give you an idea, if you need to zoom into an area or anything like that, you can use the map toolbar. Down on the lower section, there's 2 tabs. There's an events tab where you can see both live events and historic events, and then there's also a geofence tab, and that's where you can, again, create geofences and then store those geofences boundaries for different areas that you may want to track if vehicles are in that area or outside of that area. And then there's also views. So as again, based on, for example, Fleet, who are not here, they're able to see all the vehicles. Whereas maybe if you're just in water, you probably will just see the water view because that's all you're concerned about is the water view. Or I know with Dawn and Tom, they should be able to see multiple department views. But that's where you can essentially categorize and filter vehicles by those different views. So in terms of the users and vehicles, these are some things I'm going to cover here. I'm going to show you how to add a user, modify a vehicle. I actually got from Dawn today a couple vehicles that we can modify, and I'll show you how to do that. Adding odometer values in terms of being able to keep track of the current odometer. We would have to add essentially what's called an accumulator for those vehicles to be able to, if you want to report on current odometer or any given odometer in some of the reports, I'll show you how to do that. Ability to add and sort of reorder columns. So there's columns where you can see the vehicle name, the status, when the vehicle last checked in. Well, you can reorder those around, or you can also add and remove columns. So I'll show you how to do that. And just as a bonus here, I'll show you how to add custom fields. So we can add custom fields onto the vehicles. If you wanted to track additional information, such as equipment or other things, we can add custom fields onto the vehicles as well. So in terms of adding a user, up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button. It's called Add New User. You click that, and then you're prompted to pick a user type. And the key here with the user type is it needs to be an operator. So an operator is someone that essentially can log into the system. And when you pick the operator, then you go to the next. It's the details here where you add the username. The username is the name that you're logging into. For example, GIS1 is a username, or Engineering1, or whatever it might be. You set the password, and then the name is the name that's displayed. So that's displayed in LiGO, and it's also displayed in your report. So it's there's a username, which is the one that's logged in, but then you can have a display name, which is the name. If you put an email in for that user, then the benefit of having an email is they can automatically, for example, get reports emailed based on to them. So you can set up a schedule. For example, every Friday I need to get a report sent to me, and so for all the users, we set up an email address so that you can set up automatic reports to be sent. And then you could put a description, and we can also, as I mentioned with vehicles, you can add any custom fields as well onto that user. We define the role for that user. So when you're creating the user, you want to pick a role. So for example, if you're creating a new user within, let's take engineering, you may have under engineering, you might have a supervisor role, or you might have an administrator role, or maybe you have just a basic view-only role. So you can sort of pick the different roles that they might have, and there's permissions essentially set with those roles. And we'll be covering roles in more detail here in a minute. And then you set up a tag. So a tag, again, there's tags already built in here for engineering, water, energy, and let's see all your different groups. And what that does is it's the tag, for example, when you set that up, then if it's a water tag, then of course that user's only going to be working with water-related groups versus other groups. So it's just a general on how you add the user there. To modify a vehicle, all you have to do is right-click on that vehicle, and then you're prompted with this dialog here. So this gives you different options to zoom to different levels of the vehicle, draw the tracks. The key thing here is the edit user option. So you edit user, and then that allows you to modify the information on that vehicle. So for example, as I mentioned, the name, and I'll show you how to do this in a minute, change the name of it, or maybe you want to add a description of that vehicle. So we can put in, it's, you know, in this case down below, 2014 Ford Transit. And the nice thing is if you add information or you add more details, what you can do is then you can search by that easily. So if you want to find all of for example, the 2014 vehicles, or you want to find all the Fords, you can quickly search on those, and all those will pop into your list based on any values that you add to the vehicle. And again, it could be equipment, it could be the driver, it could be other things that you maybe want to add that you can search by.
Hey, Brett, can I ask you a question on the zoom feature you just now went over?
Yeah.
So when you actually select a vehicle, when the admin selects a vehicle, or when anyone selects that vehicle going forward, the default view a person would see of that vehicle would be, say, on a city level, street level, or region level? Is that what that's for?
So that's basically what when you right-click on it, it just gives you options to zoom to that level right there and right there. So if it just allows you to, if you want to get right down to the street level, you can right-click and then zoom to the street level. But you can also, there's a variety of other ways that you can zoom in. You can just there's on the right-hand side, there's a bar that you can go in and out, or you can use, if you have a mouse, you can actually use the roller and just zoom into the map that way. So there's a variety of ways to get into the map.
So you're not really modifying vehicles here. What you're doing is you're modifying the view of the vehicle.
Well, with that specific vehicle, basically you're interacting with that specific vehicle you selected. So you select a vehicle, and then that allows you to do different things with that vehicle. And one of the options is to actually edit the vehicle, which is the edit user option.
So the other options are things that, say, supervisors or other people would be able to do as well. The zoom features and things like that when they're looking at the screen.
It's just a map scale, Tom.
Huh? What did you say, Dee?
I said it's just a map scale, Tom.
Right. Exactly. That's what I was. You're not actually modifying a feature of the vehicle there, except for the edit. Okay. All right.
And you can also modify the colors of both the tracks and the vehicle icon. So, for example, we sort of set up some basic colors and vehicle colors, but you can go in if you have within your group, let's say you're engineering and you want to sort of have a different color within your engineering group for some vehicles versus others, you can go in and modify the icon here, and you can also change the track colors. And changing the track colors is handy if you're wanting to maybe draw multiple vehicle tracks to sort of compare maybe two vehicles where they drove. You might want to have one with green color and one with black and one with blue. Then when you draw those multiple tracks, you can sort of see where they're, driving for the day or whatever. And then so there's this change icon option here, and that there's a catalog of images that you can pick from that allow you to change your vehicle, what the vehicle looks like. We can also, if you have your own icons, we can also import those in as well that you could use as an option. But there's a list of essential available icons that you can pick from. In terms of odometer, so if it's important, this is probably going to be on the fleet side. This is probably important for the fleet, John and some of his team, to be able to know odometer reading. So this gives you the ability to essentially at any given time know what the odometer reading is. So for example, if John needs to know every 5,000 miles that a vehicle needs to come in and get service, with this odometer set, he can receive notifications when a vehicle gets to within 100 miles of 5,000 miles, and that vehicle needs to come in for service or something along those lines. So all you have to do here is go and look at the current odometer value and then put in the date. And then what it does is essentially it keeps track of that odometer. So as the vehicle drives, the odometer goes up, and then it essentially, as I mentioned, when it gets to 3,000 or before it gets to 5,000, it can send notifications on that. This is the vehicle view, so you can add and reorder the columns. So the default columns that you'll see are the name, which is the name of the vehicle. The last seen is when the vehicle was last seen. The track option, so that allows you to turn on the track to view where the track is driven. And then the status tells you whether the vehicle is on or off at any given time. And so all you have to do is right-click on the column, and then there's a number of other fields that are available that you can add, or you can also uncheck ones that are not important to you. You can just drag. If, for example, you wanted status over to the left, you could just drag it and drop it. So it's fairly configurable that way. Just the bonus option, up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little arrow here. This allows you to, if you wanted to add custom fields onto, for example, a vehicle. And this is, so if the city wants to do this, we may want to do this together initially. We may want to provide me with some fields and can show you how to do that. But you basically click this Manage Custom Fields here, and then it gives you a list, and then you can pick, for example, the field type. So it could be just a text field, or it could be a checkbox, or it could be a list. So or it just gives you different options, or a numeric field, and then you put the value there, and then when you're actually adding a new vehicle, then you can pick, for example, the value that you want to be added in there. So, for example, if you notice here is equipment, you could put certain types of equipment that are on this vehicle, for example, and then you could search on that in your queue to find that, or driver name or anything else that you may want. So I'm going to pop over to the actual application here. And so first thing I'm going to show is just adding a user. So one thing I'll show you here is just I have these different views for me. I'm looking right now at the engineering view, but there is a user's view here as well. So let me just pop over to the user's view. So this has all the different users, and I can click Add New User here. And again, the user type I want to pick is operator, and operator is someone that logs into the system. So I pick Next, and then let's say this is GIS3. Maybe there's a GIS3 person. I add my password that I want, and we call this. So again, this could be the name that's logged in. We could put more of a descriptive name like John Smith, like that. So this would be the display name, and this is the name that's actually used to log in with, for example. And gmail.com. And so then I go next. Let's see here. Asking me to, okay, so there's, so you can go two ways. You can either put a name like that and put a surname. Let's see, John, I'll just put Gmail. is a phone number, and this is a test. And so this user, based on the role, so I can pick, for example, the basic is an operator here, but if it was under, for example, an engineering supervisor or a Mesa administrator or different, I can change the role if I wanted to based on who they're supposed to be in the group there. And then I can pick a tag that's associated, so they can just be part of an overall users group, or for example, they could be just within the engineering users. So, again, we could create multiple tags depending on what they're doing here. And then when you're done, you just save that, and then that person could log in there. I'm going to go ahead and, so this is the user I just created. I can right-click, edit that user. And so if I wanted to change something with the user, I could change something, or I could just come down here and I'm going to delete this user here that I just created. I'm going to switch back to engineering. So Dawn had sent me a couple vehicles that needed to be changed. So one of the things I can do is I know that the number, it's a number instead of a name, and I'm going to do a quick, I can do a quick enter a value here, and it filters down to just the vehicle that I'm looking for. So I just put in, I know the last three digits are 859, so it then filters down to just that vehicle. And you notice it zoomed to that on the map. I can then right-click, come in here, go Edit User, and then I want to change the name to 495 Stephen. Yeah, that's how I spell it. Okay, Stephen, and then I'm just going to save that. I don't know why it's doing that. I got to look into that. It must be saying it's a required field or something. So I'll look at why it's forcing me to do this. Okay, so here's there's the name. It's now been changed, and you can see that one. There was another one which was 8808. So I click that, and I can right-click and edit that user. And that one is 1340 Jamie Otter. I think it's going to engineering. And actually, probably what I should do is put the vehicle type in there, but it's kind of up to you on what you want to put in the description. I could, instead of putting engineering, I could put, for this one, it's a Prius
hybrid
2007 Toyota Prius. I save that, and now, so if you notice it's still filtered here, if I click this X, it's going to go back and remove that filter. And now if I typed in Prius here, it would bring up any Priuses in my list here. Or the other one I put was engineer, so it brings up all of the engineering there. Let me edit this one and put in, this is a Ford F-150, 2014 Ford F-150. Save that. And again, if I click that and then I come up here and type Ford, there's my Ford there, for example. So based on information you put on here, you can do a quick search and bring that up if you're looking for a particular vehicle. Let me close that out. Okay, so we added a user, we modified a vehicle. Let me see. Oh, I want to show you, okay, the tracks. So if, for example, a lot of these, you notice the little blue here on the left-hand side, what that means is that it's going to be a blue track. There's some black tracks here as well. But if I wanted to change one of these, let's just take, for example, Tracy here. I'll come in, go Edit User, and I come down to the marker. So down in the marker section down here, I'm going to have to look at there. I think there's a field that's set to required here that's doing this. Here, let me actually come back out here. So that shouldn't be forcing me to modify that. You can set fields, any of fields to required, and then it forces you to, if you're adding a new or modifying, it can force someone to put in, or you can set it so it's not required, so it doesn't do that. All right, so let me go back here. So what I was going to show you is the track. Let me just pick one of these. Okay, marker. So if you notice here, the color, this color option here is the track color, and the icon is the actual vehicle on the screen. So if I choose, let's say I chose red to be the track, I could come in here to the icon option, and I'm going to change this to a red option here. Use that icon, save it, and let's see, why is it not showing that? All right, well, let me see. I'm going to have to, why is it not refreshing? I will have to look at that because it should set the icon to red, and it should change this to red. So put that as an action item to look at why it didn't change the color there. Change color, but that's. Let me try another one here. Edit user. Change that to blue. Blue. There we go. That one changed. Why didn't this one change? That one did change from blue to black, from black to blue. Let me try again here. Let's try gray. Back. There's gray. So there it changed that time. Something happened with the red. So if you notice the gray color there, let's draw this track again. So now there's the gray track and the gray vehicle. The other one I changed was a blue track. So that's essentially the idea. If you want to change the colors, you should be able to right-click, edit, change either the icon or the color of the track that's actually being drawn here on the screen. The other thing is those odometer values, and again, this is probably more important for fleet, but what we can do is just come in here and add, we just have to go look and put the current odometer value, let's say it's that value, and then put the time of when when you're reading the value. So it could be that you read the value 2 weeks ago. You could just put the date and time of when you read it, and then it would automatically sync up based on the miles that it's driven. So again, once that's put in here, then you can have, like I mentioned, you could have automatic alerts to the fleet manager for when a vehicle needs to be maintenance, or you may want to get that over into another system. The current odometer value of your fleet, for example. Okay, let's pop back here.
Hey, Rhett, are you suggesting then that fleet have access to all vehicles?
They do have access to all vehicles. So fleet does. So there's a role, which we're going to be covering roles, but there's a fleet role. And that fleet role basically can see all vehicles as that role.
But they're not administering the vehicles, though. They're not administering the system, though, correct? That should be up to the individual departments, correct?
I'm just going to take a look at what the fleet permissions are. I don't think they can do editing of anything. They can, let me look here.
Yeah, I think that's probably why I kind of overlooked the fact that fleet was on the list, because they don't have vehicles, so they're not administering, they're not being admins to the system. Yeah,
so we'll just have to look at what sort of permission. Usually the fleet manager they can look at all vehicles because they need to know, they need to know maybe utilization of the vehicles, or they need to know when vehicles need to be, it sort of falls under this whole maintenance of the vehicles. So
we'll need to find out from them what they want to see, and then the individual admins would have to create those capabilities, like the accumulators for the mileage, the odometers, and things like that.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Markers, reordering. Oh, okay. So let me show you the reordering and then the custom fields here. So if I right-click on any column up here, it gives me a list of additional fields that I can pick from. So, for example, if I wanted to pick on a driver, I could add the driver column here, or I can, let's see, if I want to move last seen, I can just drag and drop that over in front here, for example. So this just gives me the ability to, what's important, to sort of change the way the list of columns and values are here. And one key thing that we're going to be covering is your workspace. So once you sort of change, if you change or add columns, when we cover this, is saving your workspace. So you add some fields and you modify, and maybe you shrink this down, or you bring this, you can reduce this down. You just want to see maybe just the list of names, rather the tracks aren't important to you, for example. Then you can come up and save your workspace, and then it'll stay that way next time you log in. But if I was to log out and I didn't save my workspace, then it would go back to the way it was before without saving your workspace. So again, we'll be covering workspaces in a little bit more detail here in a minute. And then custom fields. So if you want to add a custom field to a vehicle, you can go to Manage Fields here. I can pick any type of field I might want. Let's say I'll just say department or something, and I could then save that as a new field. And then if I come up here again and go Manage Columns, I could, so this is already turned on. I can uncheck some of these if I didn't want them to show, but it's showing here department. And then if I come up and add a new one up here, it'll now give me, in this case, this is a new vehicle. It would give me an option here to add based on department. So it just adds a custom field onto onto your vehicles there. All right, so got a lot more to cover here, so I got to sort of keep going here. All right, so any questions about adding users or modifying users or vehicles before we move on to roles, tags, and views? No? Okay. So I'm going to cover roles, tags, and views, and this is the key thing with what's shown and what's seen is based on these roles and tags and views. So a role are fairly configurable. So initially what we did was we essentially set up a role based on what Tom provided for, there's water, there's engineering, there's different group transportation, and so we basically created some that fall into those, but we can essentially create subgroups within those. We can fine-tune. So if, for example, underwater, you want one particular group to only be able to view certain things, you can create a water view role versus maybe a water administrator role, and then just provide more permissions underneath that role. So it's all just after you create those roles and you create a user, you associate that role to that user, and then they have those particular permissions, and you can really narrow it down to, I can only see this report, or I can only see this geofence, or I can only see this particular. So you have a lot of flexibility in terms of what individuals can see based on these roles. So, and under that, you can uncheck the permissions. So there's, again, read-only information or editing, or what type of maps they see or what type of events they can see are all set up under the privileges for that role. And typically what we do is you have these base roles that are in the system, and then you just create a copy of that role. So for example, as we'll get into this, you'll see there's a water supervisor role, there's a fleet role, there's a Mesa administrator role. If for example, if you're already working in water, you can then make a copy of that role and then change the permissions for that to maybe filter it down even more so they can only do certain types of things. So it's flexible in that way. The tags that you set give you the ability to essentially, the key thing with tags is, for example, there's a tag for water, there's a tag for engineering, there's a tag for transportation, and those tags are associated with views so that when you log in as a transportation, you only see those vehicles that are part of the tags. So really, tags help you filter down the views and also the reports that someone might see. And then you can check, for example, which vehicles that are part of that tag. So we have 128 vehicles in there. There's one energy, and so when we have the energy tag, it's only checked to that one vehicle. So that's the only thing that can be seen. And then the view is basically the view is identifying based on the tag. So you choose the tag. In the case of energy, you check the energy tag, and then again, that's all you see is the vehicles that are associated with that tag. I sort of covered this before, but workspaces. The workspaces really allows you to predefine how you view LiGO, and both from the map standpoint as well as the interface. If you want only to see just the vehicles or a smaller vehicle and bigger map, you can sort of size it the way you want, and then you can come up and then save your workspace. And those can be those can also be considered bookmarks. So if you could create multiple workspaces. So for example, if you wanted a Northwest Mesa bookmark and then a South, you could have an East customer service bookmark versus a West, and then when you log in, then it automatically goes into those areas, for example. So let me show you. So under admin, there's a variety of options here. There's tags, views, and roles. So let's cover roles first. So if I click on roles, you'll notice there's a whole list of roles that are sort of set up already. And these are roles that we basically built. The ones with the dashes in front of them, those are the original roles that came in the system. And then what we did was we essentially created copies of those and then set permissions for each of these groups. So, and again, we can create more of these based on the permissions that you might need, but let's just take, for example, if we pick on Transportation Administrator, there's currently two users in that group that fall within that Transportation Administrators group. And within that, they have certain permissions. So again, there's some things that are checked off right now. So you can do things like you can create a user, you can edit the username, you can edit certain fields here that are available. So probably we don't want them to be able to edit the water supervisor, so I can uncheck that, for example. Maybe not the energy. So you can basically decide what they can edit, for example, what data they can read. So again, if it's transportation, maybe it's not energy, it's just transportation related data. What me means basically is that if you're using a smartphone, then you could see yourself. It basically locates yourself, and then also your other transportation users there. So there's a whole long list of different things that you can turn on or off that's available. So all of this information's coming from the device. You can decide, well, they can't read that information, or so you can sort of set that up. Right now, for example, this Transportation Administrator can't edit geofences, but if you wanted to, you can check these on to be able to edit. Right now, they're able to view geofences. What type of login capabilities they can have, if you want, so they can log in via mobile phone or web access. Here's the single sign-in login, so if we can check that to use single sign-in. So what kind of views they can read. So right now you notice the only view that they have capability to see is the transportation view. How much editing of the workspace they have. They can edit their own private workspace. They can manage columns. Whether you want them to be able to do dispatching. Right now, for example, the maintenance is not turned on, assuming that fleet managers would want to do the maintenance, the vehicle maintenance. So that's not, they won't see that drop-down view in their login because it's associated with the fleet group. You can, again, there's all these tools that you can turn off, whether you want, if you want to be able to do map coordinates or map tools or points of interest. What type of reporting they can do, so you can decide, whether they can create reports, print reports, what format they can use in their reports, which reports are viewable. So again, you can really define what it is that you can based on each individual, how much they have capability of doing within the system based on these privileges here. So we'll save that. If we go to the basic role, and we can sort of compare the basic role to the administrator role. Right now, there's nobody currently picked for that as a basic role. But if for example, you wanted someone to be in that role, notice that the basic role of a transportation basic doesn't have any editing capabilities, so they can't create users or edit. They just can read. So if for example, you're an administrator of transportation, you may want to create a new user, and then you could just choose this transportation basic role, and then they would just essentially have read access to the transportation. So if we come down to view, let's just take a look at the view section here. So read views. Okay, so it's got energy, so we can uncheck that. So again, they would just be seeing the transportation view, but they couldn't edit the view or do anything with regards to that.
Right, kind of a dumb question, but you were before under the transportation administrator role, clicking things. Can they go in and change their own role?
I'll have to look and see if that's possible or not.
I was just wondering who is it that's going to be doing that then, if they're going to be administering their own systems? It sounds like it's something we're going to have to set up to begin with, right?
Yeah, so you do want to sort of plan out, you want to plan out who has permissions or roles to do what, and so it is sort of based on, are they an administrator, can they edit things, and then you sort of define that and then place that user as part of that role. So the
transportation supervisor that he was in, or transportation basic, they're the ones who will be in the end user training, the next group of training. So one of the things we'll be asking from each one of the groups probably in the meeting tomorrow is a list of people who need to be trained for those roles for each one of your groups. Thanks, Rhett. Go ahead. Okay. So yeah, this may be something that you just want to sort of think through in terms of, is each department going to have an administrator? Then what we do is we do something like an engineering administrator and then an engineering basic, and then you have those two roles, for example, and one's more of an editing, someone that can edit actually, and then another is just view only within each department. If that's, or there's this generic basic too that you could use if it's more of a generic. So if maybe there's someone in customer service that needs to see all vehicles, but all they're seeing is it's view only. So maybe they're taking calls in and they need to see all the vehicles, but they can't edit anything. They're just viewing. So it's really flexible in terms of how you sort of set it up and what they can do. Oh yeah, here's a view only. So view only basically is, if you log into that, you're going to just see a map and you're just going to see vehicles moving around, but you can't do anything else with that sort of role. But again, you can then create a copy of any of these and then sort of fine-tune or fine-tune those roles further down if you're responsible for doing that sort of managing of the roles and the users that are coming in. Let's see. Okay, so tags and views. So under let's go to views here. So right now, these are the types of views that are available. So we have water, transportation, engineering. So if you were a transportation, part of the transportation, those two users, you're probably only going to see this transportation view. Or if you're energy, you're only going to see energy view. So that's essentially, it's just filtering down
the views that you have. You can also create, for example, if you notice there's an engineering view for all vehicles, but you may want to also manage the users, the engineering users. So you can create a view for those users that you have permissions for, that you can see the users and do certain things with the users as well. So that's sort of up to you. If you can just put all of your users into one group, or you can create your own based on each department, and then based on your role, you would just see those specific users. There's also things such as driver view or device view, again, based on if you're managing at that level too. But I'll just pick transportation as a, I'm going to be picking on transportation here, but so if you notice the transportation view, it's got the tag as transportation. So if we pop over to the tag for that, this has all of the tag is associated with all the transportation vehicles. So as when we add new vehicles into the system this next round, when we create those vehicles, they essentially add those users to this tag, so that when a transportation user logs in, again, they're only seeing those vehicles that are in their group, and they're not seeing, notice these other ones down here in that group. So it's just, again, those tags sort of filter down the vehicles, as well as they filter down your reporting, which we're going to be covering next. So are there any questions about what the roles, views, and tags? This is really defines what you can see and what your permissions are these sort of three things right here. No questions?
Nope.
Okay. Do you have a question, Tom?
No, I was saying there's no questions here, Rhett.
Okay. Okay. So the next thing that we're going to cover is the events and reports. So events are basically under admin. There's event rules, and there's some predefined event rules that are in the system, but we can add additional event rules based on what you want to track or set up for events, depending on what's important. So under event rules, there's a list of events. You can create a new event rule. And so, for example, you may have an event rule for specifically for geofences. So you want to be notified when someone goes inside an area or boundary or leaves a boundary. That would be a geofence sort of event rule. There's other ones, for example, analog or digital expressions, and these might be things such as some harsh driving activities or other types of events. So, and then when you set those up, you can set up the notification types. So it could be an email, SMS. It can be just go into a report, argument, or it can show visually on the map. So there's different types of notifications that you can show. It can be in a variety of form, either showing on the map, it can show in a report, it can be sent to an email based on those events. And again, when I do the end user training, I'll actually get more into sort of, I won't be showing this level of detail, I'll just be showing the events, like speeding events and some examples of idling events and things like that. But let me show you what I'm talking about here. When I'm referring to the events, down here in the Events tab, there's these are events that are occurring. So if you notice, there's this live option. This shows any live events. Right now, there's no live events occurring. So there's no one that's currently idling or anything like that. But if I sort of hover over, I can this green area here gives me where events are occurring or have occurred in the past. I can click on that and it shows, for example, an actual speed event here, and it shows that icon on the map that looks like a little speed.
What is that speeding OBE down there, by the way? Under the event rule? Under the event rule, you had a speeding OBE. Was there someone actually speeding earlier?
Yeah,
if you
so
go back up?
These are speeding events down here.
Right. Right. Under the event rule column that you have, there was one that said speed over or speed OBE. If you go back up with your scroll bar. There, speeding over. So was someone actually then speeding by the rule that's been set for that area? You just went over it. It said speeding over. Jolie Cox?
Yeah, so all of these are speeding events down here in this list.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
There's one that says speeding over. So someone was actually speeding.
Yeah, and so let me show you how how this works up here. So under admin, there's this event rule, and the event rule is called actual speed limit. And if I bring up this, this is the event rule that's defined. And so this is called actual speed limit, and it's currently enabled. It's right now it's defined for every vehicle, but you could create an event rule specifically for your group. So for example, we could create one for engineering if you wanted maybe a different trigger to happen. Maybe in engineering, let's say you want it to only trigger 10 miles over the speed limit. You could create your own event rule and then just tag it to your engineering group, and then change the name here to engineering, and then that way you're seeing, just with your engineering group, you have a specific rule that you want versus maybe water has a different parameter, like, oh, I want, if it goes 7 miles over the speed limit, I want it to trigger, for example. You have the ability under this event rule to make it always active, or you could set it up on a schedule. So if, for example, you wanted it just to be Monday through Friday between a certain time, you can set that up here. So you can define a schedule for the vehicle if it's, or you can just set it as always active. This is the speeding expression information. So it's what it is it's defined based on the road type. So you have, for example, residential. You have primary, you might have motorway, and so sort of these are the default speed limits for some of these. So, but you can either modify these or you can change. What this means over here is 7. That means that if it goes 7 miles over that 65-mile speed limit, then it triggers an event to happen. So this is sort of the default settings on when those events trigger. But if this for you is not, if that limit needs to go up to 10 miles, if you're getting too many alerts or something, you can modify this so that it only triggers, for example, 10 miles over the speed limit. And then down below here, you can set it up to, based on the report information that you want displayed. So the way this is currently set up is in the report, it's going to show the speed limit, the actual speed limit, what the vehicle is speeding at, and then the road type. So it gives you sort of in the report. And then also here you have, you can set up who the report gets emailed to. So you can set up an email notification. This is just an example here of it's going to go to the engineering users, but so you could filter it down just by just the engineering group, and anyone in that group would be the ones that would receive those emails. So this is kind of showing you an example here, but you can set up, again, the report or email notifications of how those are sent out. And then you can decide on this event whether you want it to show on the map or not. So you can, it's currently enabled. So this little checkbox shows that every single speeding event are going to show up on the map. They're closed automatically when, in other words, if the vehicle is driving and they speed, as soon as they stop speeding, it closes it. The data is still there, it's still available, but you just go back and historically view that. Otherwise, you would see, it would just always stay on the map all the time. But that's where I showed you, for example, that historic, where you can go back and historically view those. Notice this is a custom icon that's shown on the map, so you can decide, you can either use a sort of a default icon, or you can come in here and choose a custom icon that you want to display for that. And so anyways, that just shows you in the event itself, you have the ability to sort of configure that how you want, and then define, again, which vehicles that you're wanting that event to happen to and occur there. So here's just some there's other ones in the list here. For example, outside geofence or inside geofence. So you can have when a vehicle goes inside of a boundary or when a vehicle goes outside a boundary. There's another speeding option. If basically any time someone goes over 75 miles an hour, you can have a little bit different than, based on the road type. This may be one where you get maybe an SMS or email if they go exceed a certain amount. So you can sort of create different event rules based on, again, what's important to you. Some of these other ones are stops at known locations versus unknown locations. So it's automatically capturing when a vehicle stops somewhere. The known locations are what are called points of interest, and I'm going to cover that if we have time. If you load points of interest, let's say all of the city facilities or buildings, when a vehicle goes within a radius of that point of interest, it'll capture when they arrive, the total time they spend there, and then when they depart based on those points of interest. And this might be where they stop, but it's not a point of interest. So for example, it'll at least, in the report, it'll at least give you the address of where they stopped and how much time they were there. So that's sort of the two differences here. Is this is based on either this is based on a point of interest, or this is just based on where they're stopping in general. And this is trips. So this is essentially for identifying when a vehicle starts and they leave, and then they stop in another location. It calculates the distance, the miles, fuel, and all that sort of information in the trip event. And then some of these others are sort of, they combine together, like right cornering, left cornering, braking, acceleration. These all go into what's called a harsh driving report. So it sort of combines multiple events into one report. If, for example, you wanted to add your own event rule, you just go add event rule here. I can go next, and then I can decide, let's say I just want this to be with engineering vehicles. I can decide the schedule. Here's my expression. So again, it could be a geofence. Let me just pick, I'll just show you an example here. If I go pick analog, there's a whole list of things that can be captured. So a lot of the times what we'll do is, if you have specific events that you want to capture, you can tell us and we'll help you set it up. So this is not something that you necessarily have to learn right away. There's just a lot, just so you know, there's a lot of things that you can do with these events. So just under that one type, there's all kinds of things that can be captured with the vehicle itself. If I pick, let's say geofence expression here, the geofence, you essentially define whether it's going to be inside or outside. So in other words, if you want any time that the engineering vehicles go outside of the city limits, you could pick this outside here, and then go next, and then again pick your notification type. So let's say I want to get email notification, and then you just pick the recipient. So it might be the engineering users here, and then you can decide what in the email what's going to be sent to the end user. So you can say left city limits. So that's what would actually show up in the email that gets sent to you. And then you could put, for example, the vehicle name. So it would show this particular user, and you might probably what you would want to do is actually put the username and then put left city limits. So this would give you the vehicle left city limits, and I hit OK here. And then, so basically, if that happens, you would get an email notification that they left the city limits here. And then you can decide whether or not that's going to be showing on a map or not. Probably you don't need to do that since it's going to go in an email notification. And then basically, all you have to do is save that, and then you have a new event rule there. So again, most likely, if you have some specific event that you want to set up, we can work with you to work on getting that set up initially there. So these event rules then fall into the reporting. So you have a lot of different report capabilities. There's some that are already in your list. You can create additional ones. So let's just pick. I'm going to pick, for example, let's pick trip and idle as an option here. And I'll just go ahead and generate this trip and idle report for today. And this is going to run and show me so for today, it gives me, it sort of summarizes based on these vehicles here. So you can see here when this particular vehicle, on page 1302, started at 7:27 a.m., stopped at 3:03 p.m. They drove 25 miles. Their maximum speed was 67. Duration of idle means the time that the vehicle was stopped versus 2 hours and 41 minutes actually driving. Gives you percent idle there. So this is just one example report here. You can email that to somebody after you run it. You can print it. You can choose a different format. You can also choose a different time frame. But let's say if I want to, so this is one example report that I ran under Managed Reports. So if we go to Managed Reports here, this is where, and maybe everyone might not have this capability, but you can edit certain reports. So for example, this is one that I did earlier. If I come up here and go edit this report, I can sort of set the parameters of what this report is going to do. So I can say, so it's inside geofence. This is only for engineering. I can change the title here. I can set this, if I like this report, I can set it up on a schedule. So if by clicking on email schedule, I can choose, I want this to be sent every week, and I want it sent on Fridays, and I want it sent to me at 7 a.m. And then I pick the recipient. So maybe this would be the engineering users, and then I want to choose the format that I'm going to get. So if I save this, basically every week on Friday at 7 a.m. I would get this report sent to me automatically based on this schedule I set up here. So that's just to give you an idea of scheduling a report. If probably what you're going to want to do eventually here is define, what we'll want to do is define a report specifically for you. So underneath this open, let's say, let me just pick one of the key ones is event rule. So this is a report definition, and if I click open here, what this allows me to do is it allows me to create a report from event rule. So for example, let's say I want inside the geofence to be the event rule, and I want that to be just the transportation vehicles. So then what I can come up here is I can say inside geofence transportation, and then I could change this to events for, I can do that, let's see, inside geofence for transportation. And so if I save this, so I've saved that report, and now if I come back here in my drop-down menu, I now have a inside geofence report, and if I want that only to be for transportation, then again, if I come up here to my roles, and I'll just go to this. Actually, let me go to administrator. So administrator, and let's go to privileges, and I'm going to come down to the report section. So notice that here's that report. So maybe this transportation user doesn't need to see current odometer reports. They don't need to see all trips. They don't need to see, so you can really filter this down to just the reports that the transportation user needs to see, for example. So maybe just this inside geofence. And if I save this, then that user would just see those specific reports. So does that make sense in terms of how that works, the privileges? So you create you can create a report and then define who it is that can see that report based on the privileges.
Yep. They're all shaking their heads, yes. Okay. You can hear that, right?
Go to right. So right now you probably are going to see all the reports. So part of it's figuring out the reports that are important to you, and then sort of filtering out those that aren't important, and just basically setting that up so it's just the things that each group needs to see. So it's really flexible. If you need to see all the reports, you can have those, but you may want to just but this is where, again, as you create those users under transportation, you can really set it up for a basic user just to be able to view certain reports or not see any reports, or however you want to do based on the permissions you have here for that particular user.
Red, I got to ask you a real quick question here. Is there some sort of a configuration mapping document that we're going to get that has all the configurable fields so that they can go through and work with their departments to select the values for each of these, or are they going to have to go through screen by shot and decide what they want? Do you have a mapping document?
So let me understand what you mean. Are you talking about the permissions here? Is that what you're referring to?
The 4 different configurable things that you mentioned before.
So,
you can do rules, values, what are they, rules, values, roles, and users or something? Is there some sort of a document with all these that they can go through? I can send you a copy of one we had from our engineering system where they had to go through and map out the values they wanted for each one of these things for a system they had.
Well, so there's the user document that I sent you could help. There's obviously the PowerPoint presentation. So I guess
there's some sort of a configuration mapping spreadsheet that you get with applications where it has all the different values and rules, and you go through and you're able to select.
Well, I guess it's all in terms of the list of values. They're all here under the permissions.
Okay. So they have to go through, from what you know, they have to go through screen by screen on each one of these. Select what they want. So, I guess what you're asking is sort of an explanation of what this information is under privileges. Is that what you're asking for? So, for example, what events are or what geofences we can take it off. Brett, we can take it offline. I'll send you a copy of something we've gotten in the past for applications.
Okay. Okay. So the key thing here is this managed reports allows you to manage the reports. The end users won't see the managed report option. They'll just see the reporting option. Yeah, let's see here. So we covered the event rules, and then we covered the reports. And I guess right now we're just sort of touching the tip of the iceberg, I guess. Part of what we need for you to do is dig into this and then come back with questions. And maybe also what Tom mentioned there is providing a list of configurations sort of that you want per group. It's very flexible, I guess, in terms of how the permissions that you have or for each group that logs in terms of what they can see or cannot see. So I think we only have about, let's see, 6 minutes left here. So covered reports, the demonstration. Is there any questions and answers? I don't know if we're going to have much time to do the points of interest. I can do a quick overview, but I want to make sure I answer any of your questions before we end here.
Yes.
And I can stay later, too, if people want to stay later.
I don't know if I'm jumping the gun or when the integration administration occurs or whether or not there's documentation with respect to referencing web services that are querying the defined groups within LiGO to overlay into other mapping systems.
Do you hear the question, Rhett?
I did. I missed the end of it. Well, I missed the end of the question.
Taking the information out of LiGO, and actually interfacing fields from this application to other systems. Is that close, D, or?
It's related to the themes or the groups, you know, whether it's a transportation group. It's part of the product. The product, as I understand it, is supposed to be able to be integrated with our enterprise GIS. So if there are, and I don't know, obviously that's not part of this, you know, but it's an administrative function.
Right.
So my question relates to when documentation or how that will be provided for our understanding.
Yeah, so that's called LiGO Access. So that's our interface API, and there's sort of two components to that. One is that we can bring over the feed. So for example, the live vehicles that are in LiGO, we can bring over to ESRI, so you can have vehicle feeds on, let's say you have an operation web map or something in ESRI, you could see vehicles over in ESRI, or the other one is, of course, CityWorks, so being able to see vehicles in CityWorks. So that's part of the CityWorks, for example, the ESRI and CityWorks integration task that we're going to be doing.
So that's just later on. Okay.
That's another milestone.
Does it have any relevance, though, to how groups configure their, you know, like if they need a subset of vehicles that participate in CityWorks, say half their department does work in CityWorks and the other half doesn't? Is that something that should be considered in any configuration from a department administrative perspective?
Yes, and I believe we've on the LiGO side, we've got that set up. We'll provide you with an ESRI data model as well. So we provide that as part of our LiGO Access solution. So so if you're wanting to, for example, set up custom fields on the ESRI side, you could have on the vehicles, the departments, and then, for example, display it differently that way in the feature class. So, sorry, we're getting into the technical stuff here, but the data model provides a feature class for the vehicle, and then you can add custom fields onto that to display it differently within CityWorks or ESRI.
Within the next couple of months, because the project's really only about 3 months in total.
But is the documentation available before we get to that point?
Did you hear that? Could you hear that question, Red? Can we get the documentation on that early so they can start reviewing it?
Yes, I'll put that as an action item here.
That's it.
Guys, anything else department-wise? You guys have any other questions? It sounds like a lot of work for you guys going through and configuring all of your departments the way that you're going to want with these settings, rules, values, what you want speed limits to be for notifying people, who you want to be notified. So
and we can help with that. So we can provide you assistance on that. So don't feel like you're totally left hanging to do it all by yourself. If you have specifics, we can go in and assist you with that too. So don't feel like you have to.
Are there instruction manuals for this as well? Not just the what we're looking at today in the presentation and the training, but is there something that kind of follows them through? You know, on this screen, these are the things that you'd be looking at configuring, and are there any manuals?
There's that the LiGO user manual I sent you has some of this in that manual.
Okay.
I think you and Don.
Okay. On configuring the system?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll get that out to you guys. Now that you've got some idea what it looks like, we'll send that out to everyone.
And you may want to, and some of you might want to sit in on the general user training, because again, this training sort of fairly technical, but the user training provides you with some of the basics on just, you know, working with the vehicles and some of that as well. And if you so speaking of which, if we can't make it to points of interest in geofenceless today, but at least let me the next steps, discussion on the LiGO introductory training. So this is sort of the agenda for that training is again, introductions, providing a LiGO overview. So it goes through some of the basics of LiGO, goes through vehicles and vehicle tracks, goes through the map, how to interact with the map and the map tools, and then some of the basics with the events and alarms and notifications. So that's more from an end user's perspective. We won't be going into how to create events or anything along those lines. It's more of actually how you go and view those things and how you view the reports. So that's sort of the introductory training. At least that's the thought. If you have something specific you want to cover with your group on the introductory training, we can add that in as well. But this is sort of the basic level of at least intro training on using LiGO.
And the people that this is targeted for, like supervisors, people that would go in and actually view the system, who'd be receiving the reports, that kind of thing?
Yes. Or they might be customer service people that are just, taking calls or those sort of things, or supervisors. Okay, so that's the group we'll need you guys to select from your departments who you want to have that training.
When is that training?
Is it June? Not June.
Oh, June?
I'm sorry, was it January 23rd? Oh, we're targeting that. I can't bring is it January 23rd?
Yeah, that was the week we were looking at.
That was the week. I could do it sooner, but I think we had thought about the week of 23rd, but it's up to you in terms of your side and when you're ready. But I could either do it.
We wanted them to have some time to be able to select their users and who they want to be part of that training. So I think January 23rd is the general user training. The following week will be the mobile application. So who do you want to have go to the mobile application training as well? There is an app for this. So, yep.
On the user training, you were talking about doing 2 separate ones with different departments.
Right, different departments or combining departments, whatever we can do. Training rooms are kind of hard to find during that time period, so we may be combining some. So.
I want to make you aware, Tom, on the mobile training. It can be multiple. The mobile training can do multiple things. So it could be potentially different end users that use the mobile. So the mobile can be one. It could be someone that's just on their mobile phone and they want to view their vehicles on their mobile phone as maybe a supervisor. They want to see where their crews are. Another piece of the mobile is there's a whole jobs component, and that could be an end user where you're dispatching jobs and they're getting turn-by-turn direction to a location. And then there's, of course, the inspection application. So there's sort of 3 components to consider with mobile, using it on a mobile phone or tablet. So I just want to throw that out there that there's sort of 3 different
inspection app portion should probably be separate since not everyone's going to be using that.
Okay.
I think only transportation is looking at doing that for right now.
We are.
Yes. So if we can separate that portion out from the mobile training, that way, the rest of the folks who don't need it. Anything else, guys? From Rhett? Nope.
I guess engineering had one question. When are we going to be able to edit our people or the users in there? When I right-click on my guys in the live thing, on there. So when will users or when will logins for us be issued that are actually logins? Do we need to create those first, then we can edit it, or?
I think that's one of the things Rep was asking about at the very beginning. What permissions do you need? So it sounds like probably all of the admins need the ability to change the names that are associated.
Okay, so what I can do, probably if you notice on the roles, there's this transportation administrator and transportation basic role. What we can do is we can do that for each department, basically have an engineering administrator and an engineering basic role. and then there could be a water administrator and a water basic, and that way, that administrator can do all the editing of their vehicles. Is that sort of what you're thinking? Is that you'd have maybe
That's exactly. As soon as possible. The sooner we have that, the more usable it is.
It might be waiting on.
Yeah, that's a
so
separate.
one question I have on that is, are the users that you provided, Tom, are those all going to be administrators then, the engineer 1 and engineer 2?
Yeah. That's what I said before. The logons you've created, those are all admins.
Are all admins? Okay, that's what I wanted to know. And then the users beyond that will be probably basic or just they won't be doing any kind of editing. Is that a correct assumption there?
Right. Yeah, they're people like the supervisors who'll be viewing the report, viewing the system. So they're the next group to be trained. So by that time, we should have it worked out with you how we're going to import all of the usernames into the system, if we're going to do it by batch, if there's going to be some sort of Okta integration, be able to bring in usernames.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, so I'm clear on that now. So I'll go ahead and create those roles, and then all of those users that you provided me, Tom, I'll put those as administrators of those various groups. I'm assuming the IT would be able to do editing of all of those. Is that correct assumption? Or okay.
The GIS group and the PMO group need access to all.
Okay. All right.
Anything else, guys? I guess we lost the other person who's on the phone. He's actually sitting here with us now instead. So, unless you guys have anything else.
I tried to take it off mute and I hung up instead. It was one of those, technical errors.
Well, thank you, Rat.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll send you this presentation too. Just following this, I'll email it to you, Tom.
Super. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye.